one criteria. Because they've been to sessions where they say, if I did sell by owners, I'd be really, really successful, and somebody else says if I did expires, I'd be really, really successful, and somebody else said if I had a really good website, I'd be really, really successful. And no kidding, I've had people say, they just get confused. They're like, just too much stuff. If only there was one single criteria that somebody who is valid had empirical data upon. And luckily for you, there is, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about what Harvard Business School calls the number one, and they have empirical data for this, the number one criteria or variable for success for any professional in any profession is the ability to use language to influence, persuade, or negotiate with somebody. Which is sort of amazing because we're sort of losing the knack for this. Would you agree? I mean, I've got a website, I've got technology, I've got my own projector because I like it better, which is why we're using mine. I've got my own remote. I get the technology thing, but the truth of the matter is, what we do for a living is influence or persuade people. And it just coincidentally happens to be the one thing that they've identified as being really, if you're really, really good at it, it'll change your life. And it'll change the lives of the people you're trying to help. Not to be confused, however, with this.
Interested in purchasing some beluga caviar.
This is not the shop. I have nothing for sale.
See, let's go. No, Mouse. This is how the game is played. Maybe he thinks we're Russian mafia.
Oh, yes, people make that mistake about us all the time.
Peter gave us this card and told us that this was his cousin's boat. Are you sure you can't help us?
How much do you need?
£5.
Dame su banco. $80 an ounce.
Well, we were paying $40.
And now you pay 80.
50.
80.
60.
80.
I don't think you're doing this right.
70, that's my final offer.
80.
Done.
And therein lies the problem. Seriously, this is, write down this phrase, positional bargaining. Positional bargaining is what that is. I'm going to give you some books to read because, no kidding, if this is, number one, it's what we do for a living. Number two is it's the number one criteria or variable. I'm not sure why everybody needs more of this. The more courses you can take, the more books you can read. This is becoming more and more valuable all over the world. So I planned on retiring 5 years ago, but here I am. Because people keep, they're not corporate entities. In the United Kingdom, I do Royal and Sun Alliance. Corporate guys want to know, how do you get union guys to do what you want them to do without threatening to fire them? 5-star hotels, how do you get customer service people to do what you want them to do with that? This is a big deal. Positional bargaining, let's split it down the middle. It's not negotiated. It's a move. Trust me. I'm not one of those guys who say you never do it, but it's the last move, not the first move. There's other stuff that needs to get done ahead of time. Here's a book or two to read. First book I read in the 1970s, which is not the best book in the world, but I learned a couple things seriously out of this particular book. I taught, somebody asked me I mentioned in the last session, I was a school teacher. Somebody said, so what did you teach during the break? I'm always reluctant to say, but here we go. I taught drug and sex education to teenagers in junior high school in Washington, D.C. Yeah, that was me. And no kidding, without me going to the dark side. I was in my 20s. I was really good at it. I mean, I went to school to learn how to teach critical issues in health. We had just come out of the 60s. It was the 70s, so it was a big deal. What they didn't teach me was that probably within the first year or the second, and for the 10 years I did it, some teenage kid was going to come to me and say, Mr. Hatch, Somebody convinced me if I did this stuff, that it wouldn't hurt me. If I just chipped a little bit of this instead of putting in a vein, I wouldn't get addicted, I wouldn't get hurt. One of my friends just died. I don't want to die. Can you help me? How many of you have a teenage kid at home, or ever did? If that was your teenage kid, would you not hope that Mr. Hatch wasn't winging it? Seriously, this is, I needed to go back to school. I needed to learn how to help somebody make a decision for themselves that was in their best interest, that without me there as a catalyst, they probably couldn't or wouldn't make, which was way more serious than buying or selling a house at the time. You with me? So I'm not trying to take you to the dark side of it. This was a big deal. This was the first book I read. Not a great book. Some of it you're not going to like because they talk about gambits and moves for advantage. Things have changed a little bit since the 1970s when this book came out, but there's two things. Write down these two words. Write down these two phrases. Number one, learn skill. Nobody's born with an knack. And why is that? Counterintuitive. We do what feels right, almost never the right thing to do. So you have to unlearn what you've learned to learn something brand new. So you sort of control your intuitive self. That's all really difficult. So I say one more time. Any class you can take CRS 202. Anybody know CRS 202? I wrote some of this stuff at the CRS 202. Any course on negotiating, any book you can find is only going to make you better at this. The books that probably are the best known and my favorites are, start with this one, Getting to Yes, Harvard Negotiation Project, Four Principled Model. All the master negotiators from all over the world got together at Harvard and said, you know, what Nuremberg did was good, but it's not 1970 something anymore. You should read it. The problem is they're not real estate agents. They're not going to translate the four principles into how do you use it, how do you deal with a buyer or seller. That's what we're going to do in here. Okay, if you like that book, and only if you like that book, then you read Getting Past No. People like to start with that one because it's got a better title, but it's a sequel. It assumes you've read the first book first. It assumes you've done all the things we're going to talk about to get people to yes. And if you do them 80 to 85% of the time with 80 to 85% of the people, that will work. There's a really small percentage that still are going to need more. And they wrote a second book for them. If you like William Ury, who's the primary author, then he wrote a couple of other books. Power of the Positive No. How do you say no to somebody and still make the deal? And part of that is getting to yes with yourself. There's a slew of books. Any of you still do open houses? Any of you still do open houses? But when you're sitting at the open house and nobody's coming, because you know they don't. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Sorry, in my neighborhood it is. So, read a book, okay? All point to certain principles. In the hour that we've got, we're going to cover three specific principles. Three things that you can walk out of here and use. Instead of trying to cover everything there is, I'm going to give you three things that hopefully you will find interesting and also useful. All of these books point to basic fundamental truths or axioms. Here's one of my favorite. And Eisenhower said it better than I possibly can. You don't negotiate with people by hitting them over the head with a bat. That's not a negotiation, that's assault. Think about that on a larger scale. You're never going to convince somebody, or influence somebody, or persuade somebody to come to your side by calling them an idiot. I mean, in history, big or small, we've never convinced or persuaded somebody else who didn't think the way we thought by attacking them. Does that make sense? But let's address this too. Sometimes you can get them to shut up. But don't be confused. Being dogmatic, even if you get them to be quiet, doesn't mean you persuaded them. We're helping buyers and sellers make the most important decision they're ever going to make, the buying and selling of real property, or at least one of them. You're not going to persuade them by hitting them over the head with the bat, and you didn't persuade them just because you shut them up. Right? But we want to be better than that. So here's the question. How the heck do you negotiate with that? You're like, can you give advice to somebody who doesn't trust you from the get-go? Can you give advice to somebody who doesn't trust you, yes or no? Can you give advice to somebody who doesn't trust you, yes or no? Can you give advice to somebody who doesn't trust you? Sure you can. They just won't take it. So seriously, I'm sorry to do that with you, but there's something that's fundamental to any negotiation. It's trust on some level that gives life to any technique we're going to talk about here. The question is, so somebody walks in the door, they're a stranger, you're trying to persuade them to pay your fee, and you can see on their face they don't trust you. One of the biggest mistakes is to try to convince them anyway. What we need to do is we need to connect with them. You need to figure out a way to connect with these people. You don't try to convince them of anything until there's some sort of a connection or some level of trust. So the question is, how do you become, is there a strategy in 15 minutes or 20 minutes or less to become irresistible to somebody? Okay, you guys up front aren't interested in that. If I could teach you in 15 or 20 minutes how you could become irresistible to any other human being that you chose, would that be of use to you? Yes. Well, if I could do that, do you think I would be here? I'm sorry. Actually, I've got a couple strategies for you to do just that very thing. Here's our problem. The problem is this. We are bombarded with 35,000 messages a day. I mean, look at you. You've got your phones, you've got your computers, there's noises going on from over here before the lights went out. So we can't take it all in. The brain can't absorb all that. It creates a spam filter. There are noises, there are things, in psychology they call it pink noise. There's noise going on, but we don't even bother to hear it. The brain just sort of shuts it out. The question is, for us, how do we penetrate that? The question is, how do we avoid the common mistake of trying to give advice to somebody who's not receptive? Because anything you say is either going to be misunderstood or dismissed out of hand. What we need to do first is we need to create some sort of receptive environment. We need to open them up. We need to not only penetrate that spam filter, we need to make sure that the words we use have impact, because we're trying to persuade them and be impactful. Here's the answer to that. On a piece of paper, if you've got paper and pencil, I want you to do this quickly. I know there's a couple of you who want to make sure the lines are really straight and really even. Just draw 7 lines vertically, like this. Just quickly. And when you're done with that, draw 7 lines across like that. So you end up with a grid like that. Okay, 7. 7 vertical, 7 horizontal. Should look like that when you're done. Everybody there? Man, there's always one or two that pull out a ruler to make sure their line is straight. Okay, so here we go. Here's what we're going to do. I had all of you do it because it's just work. Now what I need you to do is partner up with somebody. Get a partner. Touch somebody on the shoulder. They're your partner. Okay, stop. Here we go. Whoa, whoa. The one with the longest hair between the two of you, the one with the longest hair, you're number 1. Okay, whoa, 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 whoa. So if you're number 1, put your hand up in the air. So everybody knows who number 1 is. Okay. And we only need to really use one of those grids, and we're going to use number 1's grid. We're going to be rating on that. Here we go. Whoa, listen. Here's what we're going to do. The number 1, the one with the longest hair, you get to go first. You're going to be an X. You're going to represent X. You're going to put an X in one of those squares. Your partner with the shorter hair, you go next. You're going to alternate. You put a 0 or an O in one of those squares. Here's your objective in the next 15 or 20 seconds or less. If you got longer hair, you're number 1, you represent X's, you get to go first and you alternate. Try to get 5 X's in a row. If you represent zeros, try to get 5 zeros in a row. You can do it vertically, horizontally. You can do it on an angle. Ready, go. Okay, wherever you are, stop. Whoa, wherever you are, stop. I got a question. Whoa, stop. How many of you, How many of you are trying to block your partner from getting by? Put your hand up in the air. I didn't tell you to do that. Sorry, so much for win-win, right? Some of you still don't get what I'm talking about. All you have to do is that. By the way, here we go. Okay. Makes the point, does it not? No matter how much we're the cards on negotiating. We're making a resistance. And yet, when I put you in a game, you have to win. Win-win is counterintuitive. Seriously, this is right here, this is reading, this is all books. Up until this point in time, you've been doing what feels right. And then sometimes never right. So what you have to do is unlearn what you know now and relearn it another way. Seriously, this is usually when people get a headache. This is like, you know, can you not just teach us to send more postcards? Because this is way too hard. And by the way, no kidding. And by the way, this may be the very reason why this is the #1 criteria in the world. People who have this talent, who are able to do this, who can actually persuade or influence somebody to move to their side, using and articulating and using language, they're the ones who get propelled. They're the ones who get promoted. They're the ones who seem to move farther up the ladder. Is there anybody who actually did this or something like it? There's always usually a few. Is there anybody who didn't try to block your partner? See, there's always a few, but minimally. Here's what this is called, and how we're going to use it with our buyers and sellers. This is called a fixed action response. A guy named Tolman graduated from MIT, taught at Berkeley. He was a psychologist of sorts. And he said, we have these fixed action responses. These are predictable. This is, you know, you engage with somebody, no matter how many books they've read, if they've not really learned to do it yet, you engage them in a situation like this, and they'll fall back on what's intuitive. So the #1 problem in any negotiation very often is us. I'm not talking about anybody in this room, but what used to annoy me as a real estate agent, since I got a microphone, I can say this, is if I wrote a contract on somebody else's property and they saw that contract and they said they'll never take them. And then got angry at me. Wait a second. I wrote something. What are you hollering at me about? And you're not a principal in this. You don't get to decide unless somebody put it in writing what they'll take or not take. We just started. So right away, there's something to unlearn right from the get-go. We need to overcome our intuitive self. But in the hour that we've got, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the other. We're going to focus on our buyers and sellers. They've got a sequence, a fixed action response as well. It's called cognitive mind map. It's called the cognitive mind map. We know that as soon as they call, as soon as they walk into an open house, as soon as they walk into an office, as soon as they sit down for an appointment, it's just like tic-tac-toe. Boom, they're engaged. And they go through 5 critical touch points. And if you understand and can recognize those touch points and respond appropriately to those touch points in the book Getting to Yes, or in the hour that we've got, we're going to do at least some of that, you can get 85% of the people, 80 to 85% of the people, 80 to 85% of the time to just say yes. But we have a tendency to not recognize it, not understand it, and try to jump ahead. So, if you're taking a picture, that's you. The very first thing is, I call you up, I'm thinking about selling my house. The very first thing that's going on in my head is, am I being treated with respect? And by the way, now they dovetail. The next thing is, and how would I determine that? I determine that by getting a sincere, respectful listening. #2, I have a point of view. I'm getting a sincere, respectful listening. See how they dovetail? The next one is, okay, you've listened to me. I believe that you've respected me and sincere listening. Now tell me what you've got. Understand, they don't care what you've got until you've satisfied 1 and 2. Does that make sense? And the problem with most salespeople is they try to skip that and just say, let me tell you what I've got. Let me tell you why me. Let me tell you why my company. Let me tell you why my process. And you haven't done 1 and 2 yet. They're not ready to go there. So write these words down. We're going to, again, cover as much of this as we can. So the appropriate responses in general would be, you ask, you listen, you learn, then you lead. You don't start with leading. And we're going to try to address 3 of those issues. How do we make, what are the key elements in making the connection? How do we penetrate that spam filter they've got up? Well, it says it right here. The very first thing we've got to do is listen. Right? We need to ask questions. How many of you, when a buyer or seller calls you on the phone, begins by asking questions? How many of you ask questions? Okay, and if not, see, that's a good place to start. That's what they want to do the talking anyway. So you at least direct the conversation. And by the way, if you're asking questions, do you think it's a really good idea for you to listen to them? Well, see, and there's my first problem. First problem is we're not capable of that. Listening is a learned skill. Listening, as opposed to hearing, is a learned. The average speaker goes at 125 to 135 words a minute, which is what I'm doing right now, which sounds like it's really fast and there's no way for you to keep up with me. However, the average listener, the brain of the average listener hears, sorts, and processes information at 425 words a minute. I can't talk fast enough to keep up. And there's where some of the problem begins. I can't talk fast enough to keep up. Here, as an example, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to do this really quickly. I'm even going to give you a little hint. The answer is a number. The only thing you can say in the next 15 seconds, if you want to say anything out loud, is say the number you think is the correct answer. That's the only thing you can say. It's likely in a room this size that somebody's going to say a number you disagree with, and you're going to want to tell them why they're wrong. You can't do that. I'll give you an opportunity, but not to begin with. Here's a question. How many of each animal did Moses take on the ark? How many of each? Okay, so whoa, stop. So how many of you said or thought 2? Put your hands up in the air. Which is like way, and that's not right. How many of you said 1 because 1 pair of each? So we got none of those. What's the right answer? None. Why is that? Because Moses didn't take any animals on the ark. Yeah. First of all, I like doing that. But secondly, seriously, you get it? That's the point. In 1 sentence, I told you what you were going to do, you did it anyway. The intuitive self. Well, our brain goes, you thought you knew where I was going, and you went, I know where he's going, I'm going to wait for him to catch up because I've got the right answer, I wish you would just shut up. And the problem is you miss the word. And that word can become a major argument. Most really good negotiators, that would be us, understand it's not an argument. Typically what it is a misunderstanding because people can't or don't listen unless they're trained to do so. Most people don't have a problem with hearing, they have a problem with listening. Listening, again, is a learned skill. Hearing is something that just happens. Unless you're hearing impaired, there are noises happening all the time. There are just noises bouncing off the wall. They hit the ear, it becomes a chemical impulse, it goes through the brain. You just heard stuff. Listening is a conscious effort. You make a conscious decision to listen, which means you're igniting a whole different set of neurons in the brain, without getting too technical. And because you're igniting those neurons in the brain, now you're translating the words into meaning. That's a different thing. It's a conscious effort, and that's how we learn. It's why in the very first session I said you should write notes, not just type them. Because writing it means you've got to translate it in your head, which is a conscious effort. Here's some tips on listening, just 1 or 2. This is an hour all by itself. I'm going to say this again when we end. This will be the least costly concession you ever make in a negotiation. Slow down and listen. And it means the world to the other person. Think about it. Okay, cost you nothing. It means everything to them. And if nothing else, in terms of their cognitive mind map, they'll not be prepared to listen to what you have to say until you've done it. William Ury is one of my favorite guys. He's the guy who wrote some of those books that I gave you in terms of the list. He said, you will be hard-pressed ever to convince another human being that you have the solution to their problems if you haven't first convinced them that you understand what their problems are. So tip number one, give the speaker your full attention. As simple as that may be, give the speaker your full attention. There's an hour's worth of stuff. I'm going to give you 3 basic tips. Number one, quit talking to yourself. We have 50,000 conversations with ourselves every day. It's called self-talk because nobody can keep up with us. Because the speaker's not keeping up with us, because the radio's not keeping up with us, because TV's not keeping up with us. Even a speaker and my phone is not keeping up with me. So we end up having conversations with ourselves all the time, which, by the way, is okay. It's the way we are. Until and unless, have you ever had somebody sitting in front of you and you're having a conversation with them and they're looking right at you, but you can tell without them moving their eyes, they just went away. Well, see, and by the way, see, that's what they're watching. Sincere, respectful listening is not just a bunch of words I tied together. They're watching them. Are you paying attention to me? And are you absorbing this? Because I'm not going to listen to you until you've listened to me. So here's a little trick that we counselors used to use, and probably still do. If the other person's talking, and your dialogue is going on in your own head, there are words that are trigger words. I, me, myself, my, or mine. I, me, myself, my, or mine. If the other person's talking and the conversation in my head has words about me, I'm not paying attention. What I've got to do is I've got to change the language. Changing the language, mastering the language, changes the focus. I wonder why this is so important to her. I wonder why he's saying this. I wonder why they feel that way. The minute you change the language in your head, it redirects the focus back to them. I, me, myself, my, or mine is all about me. They're still talking. Multitasking is a myth. This has got nothing to do with a particular talent or a particular age. There's no kidding, there's something called a reticular activating system that surrounds the brain. It wants you to focus on one thing at a time. Can't do 2 things at a time. Well, simple things, yes. The more complex it gets, the harder it is. Think of it this way. We came up with the term multitasking because we thought computers could do it. Right? They can do 2 different things at the same time, but not when it gets really complex. Right? If you've got a PC, all of a sudden the little time thing starts spinning. With a Mac, you get a little color wheel. Why is that? Because it's not sure. It's got to take time to move from one to the other. I'm not going to, again, spend 15 minutes on this, but read that. Google either University of London or Stanford University. They've been studying this for a decade. Don't trust me. You don't know me. Look it up. Google it. Here's what they will tell you. When you try to do 2 complex things at the same time, your IQ drops 9 points. For men, it's even worse, by the way. Don't know why that is, but it is. And why I don't know why you women are laughing at this moment or trying to hide your laugh. But seriously, multitasking. Have you ever had somebody do this? Have you ever had somebody in a conversation, look at me, and in a conversation you see them do this? It's like they got their phone on vibrate. So they don't want it to ring, and they want to make it look like they're really paying attention, and you see them do. You know, I don't care if you do that in here because I get paid no matter what. But seriously, with a buyer or seller, that annoys the heck out of me. Yeah, you know what? Full and undivided attention to a buyer or seller. Yeah, turn the phone off, put your unless they're computer geeks and want to look at the computer screen instead of you, but seriously, that's just interference. It gets in the way of the sincere, respectful listening. Put your right hand up in the air for me, please. Okay, put it back down. I'm going to show you a little movie clip. It's muted, so you're not going to hear anything. Don't be surprised if you don't hear anything. There's going to be a conversation going on. And it'll appear that one person in that dynamic thinks they are in control of the conversation. However, there may be a moment when that changes, when clearly the dynamic changes. You're not going to hear it, You have to be watching, you're gonna have to see it. And when you think you see it, I just want you to put your hand up in the air to see if you see it when I think I see it. Okay? So we're looking for a change in the dynamic. Oh, God, that's my hand. Sorry. Who do you think thinks they're in control at this point? Oh man, did you not just see that in his eyes? I know you want to watch the rest of it. We're not going to do that. Here's my suggestion, and you're going to read this in any of the books. You know how you negotiate with people? Face to face. 50 to 85% of all communication is nonverbal. If I can't see you when I make a statement, I can't see what just happened in your eyes. I don't know if you're nodding. I don't know if you're making a disgusted face. No kidding. Unless it's totally impossible. And in today's world, it probably isn't totally impossible. I travel all over the world teaching, and I negotiate with guys in New Zealand and Singapore, and I get on Skype. Or better yet, I've got Zoom. The point is, when I say to somebody, you want me to come to New Zealand for 2 weeks, let me tell you what that's going to cost you. When I say the number, I want to see his face. Are you with me? See, you don't want to miss that. Whenever you're negotiating with somebody, not just transferring information, but actually trying to persuade them, you're missing out on most of the information if you're not watching how they react to that. There are 250,000 unique words in the English language. The problem is, of course, some of those words have more than one meaning. The word she, for example, means she. I live in Annapolis, Maryland. I can go to a soccer game on Sunday and watch a father watch his daughter playing soccer, and she scores a goal, and you know, she's my daughter. But in Annapolis, Maryland, he calls his boat she. So some words have double meaning. It's just freaky. In America, people who speak English as a primary language, who do not graduate from high school, can only recognize 30,000 words out of 250,000 unique words. Does that not freak you out? People who graduate from high school, 80,000 out of 250,000. People with a bachelor's degree can only recognize 80,000 words out of 250,000 possibilities. We don't do this very well. Number one, we got a problem with the listening part of it. Number two, apparently we have a problem with it with language. So what do we fall back upon? Body language. We communicate more with that and rely more upon that. So if you're trying to persuade and use language to do it, and you really want to actively listen, it's body language. Let me take you to a little sock hop. And I'm showing you the picture because you don't know what I'm talking about. Once upon a time, we had these sock hops. We used to, so I'm 14 years old. I'm at Beverly Hills Junior High School in Upper Darby, right outside Philadelphia. My friends' names are Pinto, Apo, Weasel, Flounder, Steak, and Spud. Do you have some idea what kind of neighborhood I grew up in? Here's the problem. I'm in love with Rhonda Strikefield. Ronnie, for sure. And if you've ever been to a sock hop, and I know you haven't, all the boys are on this side of the gym, all the girls are on that side of the gym. Do you understand what kind of a predicament that puts me in? I'm thinking about walking across the room and asking Ronnie to dance, walking across the gym. The problem is, all my friends are going to watch me do that. So this is really risky for a guy. Because as I'm walking, Ronnie's already making up her mind that the answer is no. But I don't know that. I gotta walk the rest of the way. And all the way back after she says it. So I'm looking for signals. So there I am thinking, I'm going to ask her to dance. Should I walk across this gym in front of her? Should I walk? Yes or no? Should I walk across the gym? Well, the answer is we don't necessarily know yet. So let me show you the rest of the picture. Should I walk across the room, yes or no?
Yes.
So what does that prove? I mean, what's the point? Yes, body language, face, and more than just a single gesture. Let me give you a couple tips with body language. If you've ever done a class in kinesics, this doesn't mean anything all by itself. It could be cold. In America, 70 to 80% of most women in America feel more comfortable sitting or standing in this position. It doesn't mean anything. Here's when it means something. Well, watch me. I'm a seller, and you're doing your presentation, and here's how I'm reacting. That's good, right? Then you say something like this. Did you get that?
Yeah.
See, and there it is. You read in clusters. No single gesture all by itself means anything. You need to be really paying attention. If anything, the simplest thing is just look for the change. Sitting forward, lean back. Here, let's make it into real estate. You're walking somebody through a house, you're walking a buyer through the house, they're in 4 houses, and it's one of those people who's excited and writes down everything. In every house. Anybody ever had a buyer like that? But in one of the houses, midway through, they stopped writing and started looking.
Bingo.
And see, by the way, see, that means something. That house, something happened. You may or may not know what that was, but in that one house, or worse, for me, you walk somebody through 5 houses, they're not writing a thing. They've learned to be stoic. They don't smile, they don't nod, nothing. But in one of their houses, when they think you're not looking, they take a little note. Does that mean something? That means something. So look for the change. Whenever verbal communication and nonverbal communication are in conflict, the nonverbal communication is the truth. Look at me. So, Ed, do you like the house? Yes, I do. Do I? So don't be surprised when I won't write the contract when you get me back to your office. You weren't paying attention. 50 to 85% of all communication. Here's the point. Can you tell me what that sentence says? Of course you can. I've taken out 50 to 80% of the words. You can't tell, you can guess, but you can't tell me what it really means if I take out 50 to 80% of the words. Don't take out 50 to 80% of the communication. Bottom line, you're communicating, trying to persuade somebody, you need to make it face to face. You need to be able to see gestures. You need to be able to see whether or not they're a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, they're nodding or not nodding. Full attention. That's the illusion. And by the way, that's right. Yeah, we became the king and queen of the dance. If you're wondering why the little crowns that were on our head. Sorry, that's just... I said this before, let's just end this part with this. This is going to be this is the cheapest and most inexpensive concession in any relationship. And by the way, if you haven't figured this out yet, persuading, influencing, this is more than just buyer selling. This is co-op agent, this is appraiser, this is spouse, this is child, this is significant other. Anytime you're face to face with somebody trying to convince them and they're resisting you, you're involved in this. Shut up, listen. My grandfather was a teacher, of all things. He was an Armenian. Most people don't even know what that is. He was an Armenian teaching in a British school in Turkey in the early 1900s. He was a mathematician and a musician. I've always wanted to be a musician. If I could play a musical instrument, I wouldn't be here. And I've tried. In the 60s, in the early 50s, I'm going to use a reference you won't know. Harry James. I tried to learn how to play the trumpet. That didn't work at all. In the 60s, Jimi Hendrix. You know what I'm talking about now, right? Tried to play the guitar. I don't know if you've ever tried. That hurts. I mean, it hurts my fingers. Say, I'm not doing this. I've got a baby grand piano sitting in my house for the last, no kidding, 20 years that I've never touched. I know someday that I will touch it and will be able to play, except for now. My sweetheart, Annie, because she got tired of me whining about it, bought me a flute. Yikes. We used to beat people up that played the flute. Sorry. But she bought me a flute because she thought I could travel with it. Here's what I discovered. I am never going to be a musician. I'm not kidding. Not that I don't want to. Listen, I want to be a musician. I don't want to do what it takes to become one. The hours and hours of tediously drilling the 12 notes and the scales, I'm not doing it. You with me? But I'm hoping that if my grandfather was still alive, he would tell me, but that's what we do too. Words are like music. Being able to use language. Words. Have you ever been with somebody who just seems to be able to use language and they just reach out and lift you up? I'm not, you don't have to say it, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about anybody. Here. Do you know the name Janis Joplin? I don't want to use too many references you don't know. Anybody ever seen Janis Joplin? Live?
No.
Oh man, this is, seriously, Washington D.C. in a stadium with 10,000 people. This woman walked out on stage, sat in a stool with a microphone and a fifth of Southern Comfort. There was, no kidding, there was nothing, there were no pyrotechnics, there were no people dancing, she didn't have a special uniform on. She started singing and in 30 seconds she had 10,000 people at a hush. And she didn't, by the way, have a great voice either, if you know Janis Joplin. But there was something that she captured us with just that. I teach attorneys. I'm gonna try something with you guys. I'm teaching at the Bar Association in Memphis tomorrow, actually. Just to make this point. This is from my attorney class. That makes the point here. Attorneys sometimes need to use a deposition. Somebody can't come into court, right? So you're an attorney. This is the deposition. So you've got all this language. What does it mean? Well, watch.
Is this my car? This is ridiculous!
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Seriously, you get the point here?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to negotiate or persuade somebody with an email, or a text, or a tweet, you don't know what it means. The same syntax, the same language, can mean two diametrically opposed things. So right away, the more personal you make it, the better. I'm going to show you a conversation. What I want you to do is I want you to tell me whether or not you think these two people are connected. Language is like music. It's got form and it's got style. Let's deal with the form. So we're in the middle of a buyer's remorse conversation, and the client says, well, Mr. Agent, this whole thing's a little heavy for me. I just can't seem to get a handle on it. The agent says, so I see. Client says, I feel like something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I was hoping you could help me get a grasp of it. Agent says, I see what you're saying. Let's focus on home to get time. Tell me how you view the situation right now. Client says, I don't know. I'm a first-time home buyer. I'm buying this all by myself. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm really nervous. I'm really anxious. I got nobody to talk to. And you're my agent. If I don't talk to you, I don't know who else I can possibly talk to. And the agent says, I see that. What we need to do is we need to see what's important and see eye to eye on how we're going to proceed. Are these two people connecting, yes or no? So you have a sense of that. This is a leading question, sorry. Whose professional responsibility is it to sense it and fix it? That would be the agent. Is there anybody in the room, by a show of hands, don't say, but put your hand up if you know specifically what the problem is. Anybody know what the problem is? So I've got like 4 or 5, maybe 10 of you. See, and by the way, that's a problem for the rest of us. Well, we sense there's a problem, there's a disconnect. It's our job to fix it, and we don't know what the problem is. You'll know in about 3 minutes. Human behaviors don't make stuff up. Human behaviors do not make stuff up. Human behaviors, watch humans behave, to see if there's anything that repeats itself over and over again that would be either useful in this dynamic or certain things we should avoid in this particular dynamic. So, for example, have you not ever been sitting at a table, perhaps one of those little round tables across the hall, or in some banquet, you're sitting with a bunch of people who you know, and there's an empty seat, and somebody who you don't know comes and sits down at that empty seat, and within just minutes, hardly any conversation at all, and hardly any time, they suck the air out of it. Okay, you're not really sure. Let's try over here. Have you not ever been sitting at a table and somebody comes and they sit down or stand there within just a couple seconds, there's a connection made and you can tell it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to help these people out. Have you never met somebody who just brightened up a room? The minute they walked out of it? Because both exist. Here's the question. Here's what a human behaviorist would say. So, in your life, and regardless of country and language, in most people's lives, they've met somebody once that with hardly any conversation, and in hardly any time at all, they connected with. And we've all had that sense. And the human behaviorists would say, you know what, that would be really good if we could duplicate it. And human behaviorists do this. They observe it. They observe it. They try to observe it over and over again because they know if they can observe it, they can duplicate it. They can figure out what the heck is going on so we can make it happen anytime we want it to happen. You with me? So the question is, what did we see in our lifetimes? What did we see in that other person that we like so much so fast? What did we see in that other person that we like so much so fast? What is it on a fundamental, pardon me? We saw us. You saw you. And the more of you saw, the more you liked it. I've been traveling the world, looking for somebody to be in love with, and all the time, it was me. In psychology, they call that commonality. I know this is really simple, but this is a fundamental principle. People who are like each other on a fundamental level tend to like each other. People who are like each other on a fundamental level tend to like each other, and if it's deep enough, that like becomes trust. I want to make this point. I said on a fundamental level that's it's not as simple as I'm from West Philly and you're from West Philly. That's good. That's a starting place. That's not good enough. I'm from West Philadelphia. My sweetheart is from Tennessee. That's right. Seriously, Annie, we have nothing in common. I grew up in West Philly. She grew up in a place called Fort Mountain. In East Tennessee. Which, by the way, she's wanted to take me home, but it doesn't exist anymore. It was a coal mining town. When she grew up, they had no running water. They had no indoor plumbing. Right away, that's not within my contacts. I don't know. She says things every once in a while after 35 years, and the other day I know what I was doing. She said, "Man, you're like a chicken on a June bug." I had the Google June bug. I'm not kidding. I didn't know what a June bug was. We don't have them in West Philadelphia. And every once in a while I'll say something and she'll say, "Oh, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise." What are you talking about? Seriously. I want to make this point. But on some fundamental level, we saw each other in each other. Seriously, you get that? It's not superficial. There's something much deeper than that. And this is what it is. It's how people sort of process information. It is a form of their communication. The science is called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. NLP is how we store and process information. Think of it this way. I use a Mac. It sorts and processes information and it's set up in a particular way so I can get information in and out. When I first came, they wanted to put my stuff on a PC. Well, a PC just sorts and processes information, right? And the keys are set up the same way, but will it work? Will it work? Are they compatible? Can I put a keynote presentation on a PC? Yes or no? Let me help you. No. They do the same thing, but they don't speak the same language. They're incompatible. It's ones and zeros, but it's not the exact same ones and zeros. Same thing with human beings. Some people sort of process information in pictures. We call them primarily visual. Some people sort of process information in sounds and words, auditory. Some people sort of process information in feelings, kinesthetic. So there's even a third computer here. There are 250,000 unique words in the English language. The benefit to us of knowing this stuff is, but we use the same 2,500 words 80% of the time in conversation. So if you engage a buyer or someone in conversation, they will use the language, they can't help themselves, they will use the language that their computer sorts and processes information in. If they're primarily visual, what kinds of words or phrases might they say? Any of those? See what I mean? Get the picture? How far is the house away from the road as far as the eye can see? You have a clear view of that. Oh, man. Sorry. So give me, this may be Annie trying to get me out. Forgive me for this. I thought I turned it off before we started. So, give me some words or phrases that would be auditory. I hear what you're saying. That sounds good to me. That rings true. How far is the house away from the road? It's shouting distance. See what I mean? Hear what I'm saying? Are two different languages within the English language. You got a PC and a Mac trying to converse with each other. Give me some kinesthetic words or phrases. Feels good to me. I can wrap my arms around this. I can embrace this concept. I can put my finger on the pulse of this. I can get a grasp of it. See what I mean? Hear what I'm saying? How do you feel about that? Those are three different languages. It's two different computers trying to connect with each other. Now, you sense that there was a problem. You understand that connecting is the key here. Can you see what the problem is? What's the root cause of the problem? Yeah, they are. And the client is speaking what language? And the agent? Visual. Somebody's got to sense that and fix it. It's as simple as that. One evidence procedure is we're asking them questions anyway, and we're listening. Part of what you listen for now is what language do they speak? What are the notes they're playing? What are the chords and the phrases they are using? George Bernard Shaw also said this. He said, in writing you can say anything and won't key nothing. They really speak in different keys. Somebody who's primarily visual speaks a lot faster than everybody else. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but the kids are trying to draw pictures in the air and the words are just getting in their way. Typically, because they talk really fast like this, they don't need quite as often. So they talk about an octopyronate and they sound a little bit breathy. If you're a really visual nature, and I was really visual nature, we could do this for the next 20 minutes, get a whole lot more done. But if you're not really visual nature, you're wondering if I'm ever going to breathe. Fair? No kidding. Use it. Higher, breathier, faster. Somebody who is primarily auditory, here's an old cliche come true. Have you ever heard the cliche, he really seems to like the sound of his own voice? And by the way, he does. He's using the sound of his voice to sort and process information as he speaks. Somebody who's primarily auditory is actually more pleasing to listen to. If there's a problem, he's probably never going to go much faster than this or slower than this. He's never going to get much higher than this or lower than this. So if he did this for the next 20 minutes, it might be interesting, but it starts to sound a little bit like a lullaby. As opposed to kinesthetic. For some reason, they seem to need to get a feel for what it is. They're going to, yeah, it's making you crazy, isn't it? Yeah. And by the way, see, it's like, if this is a fill in the blank test, may I give you a word? The problem is, seriously, and therein lies the problem. Somebody, if you're a primarily visual agent giving a presentation, and you take a pause and say, okay, so what do you think? And they start doing oh man. And you start plopping words in for them. The problem is now you're making them crazy. People who are like each other on a fundamental level tend to like each other. Here's what we know for a fact. We know for a fact that If you want to create rapport and trust with somebody and do it quickly, you need to listen to how they sort of process information, and then you need to align yourself with them. Even physically, even if we couldn't hear and you can, it's just a picture. Can you tell these three ladies like each other? Yes or no? Yeah, how do you know that? Because our physical position is in alignment. People who like each other, align themselves with each other. And by the way, it's a picture, so it's not going to happen. But if one of the three were to move, what would happen to the other two? They move too. It's like a dance, and we don't even know who's leading here. So we want to align. We want to mirror them as best we can. We want to pace. When they move, we move. And then how do we know at the end of 15 to 20 minutes whether or not we've got them? How do we know that? They follow us, yes. So 15 or 20 minutes with the buyer or seller, we engage in them in questions and we're listening. Right away, that's got them. Because they love the fact that sincere, respectful listening. We're listening for the form of communication. And then we start to mirror that form of communication. At the end of 20 minutes, my move was something I did all the time anyway. I never wore a tie, so I just straightened my tie. If I straightened my tie and I had you, what would you do? Something like it. Well, maybe not. Question is, when I've got you, can I lose you? Yes. Yes. Okay. Then we do. We need to know style. First of all, again, I like quotations. Mandela said this: if you really want to connect with somebody, speak a language that they understand, you get their head. Speak their language, you get their heart. So, see where we started? How do we penetrate the man? How do we make sure our words get through? How do we make sure our words have impact? Number one, we keep sincere, respectful listening. Number two, we use the same form of language. See what I mean? Hear what I'm saying? How do you feel about that? Now we need to know the style. Any musicians are there any musicians in the room? So a couple of them. Yeah, here's a principle. The principle is this: people don't care about you. People care about how they feel about themselves while they're in your presence. There's a predictable human response. I don't necessarily care about you, but if you make me feel good about myself, I'll like you. Does that make sense? And keeping with the music metaphor, so Jimi Hendrix could play a guitar, but would you agree? Yes or no? But I'm not sure he could play with Yanni. I mean, maybe he could. I mean, he may just be that good. But you understand, it's a different style. It's the same 12 notes, making two different kinds of music altogether. I'm not sure Yanni, he doesn't really play guitar, but keep up with it. I'm not sure he can play country western. Now we've got style. Now we're on a stage with a buyer-seller. We understand the 12 notes they're using, but we need to play the same style. Is it country western? Is it rap? Is it classical music? Well, what kind of music is it they're playing? And we need to get in sync with that. Do that, and it'll make you.
Could you repeat that first thing?
Yeah, people don't care about you. They care about how they feel about themselves while they're with you. This should happen. I've discovered that most of you know something about DISC. Do you know DISC?
Yes.
How many of you know DISC? Okay, good, this will be quick. In the 1920s, the very first serious effort in terms of determining personality types, and by the way, it's not as much personality types as it is styles of communication. Because we can move around the different styles in terms of personality. But in terms of style of communication, this is a clue. Most people went with Jung, Carl Jung, in the 1920s, because Marston, who also wrote a book on the 4 different personalities, became better known for Wonder Woman. Yeah, he's the guy who came up with the character Wonder Woman. So he became known for the comic. Jung became known as Jungian psychology. However, like most things, we get tired of the old stuff. We want something new. So we flipped the grid, we get rid of the quadrant stuff, and we went with DISC. It's just a new version. I like the name of his book, don't you? Emotions of Normal People. That just tickles me. So here we go. Here's the grid. It's going to take me about 5 more minutes. It's going to be 5 minutes too long. You okay with that? All right. So here we go. To create the grid, we need 2 different personality elements. One is, the horizontal line is the me line. It's how I feel about myself. That gives you an idea of how that person feels about themselves. On the far left, not so good. And they demonstrate that by being submissive and indirect. On the far right, direct and dominant, feel really good about themselves. We also need to know how they feel about you, the collective you. At the top, cool and guarded, not so sure about you. At the bottom, warm and open, I'm really sure about them. It's a starting position. Where did I grow up? I grew up where? So, I don't know you, I don't like you. I hate to say that at the end of 2 hours, but that's just the way it is. So, you know, when you live on top of one another, I don't know you. And by the way, sometimes the old intuitive self freaks me out. I got in the elevator last night and people said hello to me right away. I got in the elevator this morning and people said, have a nice day. See, intuitively I'm thinking to myself, I don't know you. Why would you care what kind of a day I have? And see, that's my start. Annie's from where? She's from Tennessee. She loves everybody. Now, by the way, in the first 5 minutes, I could be wrong, and I'll start to like you. In the first 5 minutes, Amy could be wrong, and she'll start to not like you. It's just a starting position. You with me? So, the thing that made DISC a little bit different than Jungian stuff is they just switched the grid around. These are best described by those adjectives: determined, competitive, strong-willed, purposeful. I's are demonstrative. S's are real social. C's are real pragmatic, contemplative. What we need to do is two things. Who are we and who are they? Who are we? And so we're Jimi Hendrix, but they're some country western guys. And we need to be able to play our music the same way. So the very first thing is based on that. We need to determine who we are. So here's what I want you to do. Based on what you just heard, turn to somebody and tell them who you think you are. Are you a D, an I, an S, or a C? Ready? Go. Who do you think you are? Okay, stop. Okay, stop. Here we go. Stop. Oh, see, I lost you. Here we go. Stop. Come on back. Come on back. Come on back. Yeah, I lost control. Yeah, I know. So right away, here's how you really know. All the D's in the room, turn to one person and said D. All the I's in the room said I to as many people as they possibly could. They didn't stop on one, they just kept on going. The S's said, I believe I know who I am, but please you go first. And the C's, who are my favorite, said, you know what, I've got information, but I don't have enough information to make it more clear. Here we go. So, this is usually made more difficult than it really is. You can know in the first 15 seconds. There's only two things you need to decide when you're talking to a buyer or seller. Are they open or closed? Are they direct or indirect? So, one more time. I'm just going to show you a little video. It's going to be muted. You only have to make these two choices. Would we say that she's warm and open or cool and aloof?
Warm and open.
And she looked at you, but kept on looking away, so would we say she's direct or indirect? And once you've got that, we go back to the grid, and indirect or compliant and warm and open would make her what? That would make her an S. What do we know about S's? How are we going to change our presentation to make them comfortable in our presence? What do S's want? Well, you've done this, so what do you know? Number one, friend, here, you know what? If I like you, I will do business with you. I don't even much care if you know much about real estate. And by the way, it's going to get personal, so it's going to take some time. It's going to take longer than your typical presentation. Here, let's make it really simple and really fast. You saw me do an hour. My move, if what I'm saying is true, sometime during the hour, I needed to do something to make sure I touched the S's in the room. What did you see me do? that was specifically directed at the S's. I talked about Andy, I talked about Ronnie. By the way, is that for S's? And you gotta know, when an S hears that, they like it. When a D hears that, it's like, oh man, do I really need to listen to this? Yeah, seriously, you gotta know, that when you touch one, you're leaving somebody else behind. So you need to be able, no kidding, I'm doing the attorney thing tomorrow. I've had attorneys say to me when I'm doing bar association, I've got 12 people in a jury box. How the heck do I touch them all? Well, you gotta move off them. You gotta be able to flow through that. Let's try one more. Her, not the other one. Okay, so you know this one. Yeah, not her. This one, her. So is that warm and open or cool and aloof? Okay. Would you say that's direct or indirect? That's direct. See, it's as simple as that. 15 seconds worth of being in front of that buyer or seller. And where do we place her? D. She's a D. What do D's want? Yeah, you know what? When I said turn to somebody else and do the tic-tac-toe thing, or turn to somebody and tell them who you think you are, the D's went, oh no, he's going to make us talk the same thing. D's don't like that. When I did a story like my grandfather, which the S's like, the D's don't like that. They don't like metaphors or parables. They say, man, can you not just tell me in 5 minutes? Do we really need to do a 10-minute story? So your presentation, get what this really means to us. So the presentation needs to become more direct, more confined. We need to make them feel comfortable in our presence. So you need to modify your presentation to make them that way. Do you know anything about eyes? Tell me what you know about the eyes that I was doing a video on. What would the eyes like about my presentation? Here, write this down, put a circle around it. Write this down, put a circle around it. Stop, I was kidding. That's what the D's like. They just get to the bottom line. Eyes like making up their own mind. They don't want somebody to just dictate to them. They don't like their ability to make up their own mind hijacked, which is why they like metaphors and parables. Storytelling. What about the C's? Anything that I did during the course of the last hour that C's really like? Any of the number stuff? 250,000 unique words in the English language, only 30,000 non-living. Anytime I did numbers, that got 10. But when I gave numbers, did I lose somebody? Yeah, the S's don't care about that. The I's don't much care about that either. Get this, back to the musical metaphor for those of you who are eyes. When somebody shows you who they are, you should believe who they are. And you should modify and adapt to make them comfortable in your presence. When you leave and go to lunch, here's your test. There's an elevator test for this. When you're prepared to get on the elevator, you can tell who everybody is. The D's will get on the elevator first to take control of the buttons. Okay? The I's, nobody wants to talk to each other in an elevator, except the I's. Exactly. The I's want to tell a story, and by the way, if they're not done with the story, you try to exit, they will hold the door open and continue as you walk out. The S's will hold the door to make sure everybody gets on and off. My favorites are the C's. They always are. Watch for this. The C's will walk in and they'll go to the little piece of paper on the wall where it says how many people it's taken to wait. I mean, you'll see them glancing at that. Then I'll look at you and go. And whoever they are, you modify you to make them comfortable in your presence. Thanks for sitting in the